All right, I do believe that we are live. Welcome to another Sunday morning live stream, everyone. It's going to be a super casual stream today. We're going to be making some dub techno style music, and we're going to infuse that today with some vintage old school breaks. If you guys can let me know in the chat if you can hear my voice. I'm going to turn this model samples drum machine up just a little bit as well, so we can find out if you guys are hearing my voice okay and hearing the level on these drums okay. What's happening, everyone? Thanks for tuning in, Dimitri. Good to see you, Spider. What's happening, Tony? What's happening, Connor? All right, clear, fantastic. So you can hear my voice okay today, and we don't have that Donald Duck thing going on that we've had recently. That's awesome. All right. What we're going to be doing today is I've got quite a bit of gear out. I've got some old gear, I've got some new gear, I've got a couple of iPads. I'm going to start by just sort of briefly going over what I've got out today. What's happening, Robert? Thanks for tuning in. Hey, all right. Thanks, Lisa. What's happening, Omri? What's happening? All right. Good deal. Okay, so this is what we've got out today. I've got the Electron model samples. For those of you who don't know, as a sound designer, I've got several sound banks for the model samples. I've been excited to get some of these sounds into one of these weekend streams, and today we're going to be working with one of the kits in my sample banks for the model samples. Next to that, we've got a really cool piece of vintage gear. This is the Yamaha SU700 sampler, and this is the first time I think that we'll be dealing with this on a live stream today. I'll be talking about this in more detail a little bit later as we start, incorporating this into the stream, into the groove today. Over here, I've got an iPad. This is just 2019 12-inch iPad Pro, and today we're using it to run ALM, which is our master clock. So our master clock today, that's going to be clocking all of this gear out on the desk here or whatever, is going to be coming from ALM, master clock and ALM today. Next up, we've got the AKAI MPC Live. We're going to be doing some sampling into this, and we're also going to use its inbuilt kick drum synthesizer today to create a bass. You're definitely going to want to stick around for that. We've also got the Eventide Micro Pitch Delay pedal, which we're going to be using today to add a little bit more texture to some dub chords, hopefully. And we've also got the Audiothinges MicroMonsta out today, a cool little polyphonic synthesizer that I like to use. Next up, I've got another iPad. This is just an older iPad Air 2. This is going to an audio interface, which is the Novation Audio Hub 2x4. I'm not currently running any audio out of the main iPad today. We might end up, getting something going there. I'm not really sure. But this is also connected to an Audio Hub 2x4 audio interface. So each iPad has its own audio interface. Next up, we've got the Eurorack Techno setup that I went over a couple of weeks ago on the live stream, and that I used last Sunday for my techno set in Clownfest 6, the online music festival. We're using a really special module today to get the Eurorack in sync with all of the rest of this gear wirelessly. We're using the Circuit Happy ML2 clock generator. And what this is it's just a tiny little 2 HP module that generates its own Wi-Fi hotspot. I can connect up the iPads to that Wi-Fi hotspot, and then wirelessly using Ableton Link, we can get the Eurorack in sync with all of the rest of the gear today. Again, that's the Circuit Happy ML2 Ableton Link clock generator for Eurorack. Lastly, we just got my Virus Darkstar. We're going to be sampling some chords out of this today. We're also going to be using it for like an arpeggio as we start building, hopefully. I'm going to check in with the chat, see if I'm missing any important questions before we get started here. Hey, what's happening, Fade Man? Thanks for tuning in. All right, what's happening, Wall? Hey, I just wanted to give a quick thanks to Wall for the other week. You mentioned, use what is it, anagram to help me remember circuit happy, closed hat, CH, closed hat, CH, circuit happy. That's been bouncing around in my head ever since you said that, and I really appreciate that idea because now I'm certainly not going to get the name wrong. The module is circuit happy ML2 that we're using to sync up today. All right. Okay, what let's do is we're going to start by sampling some Dub Techno chords. And we're going to sample those in the into the MPC Live from the Virus Darkstar. I just want to say before we get started today that if you guys have any questions along the way, please feel free to drop those in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer any questions that come up as well. What we're going to do is I've got a preset here in the Darkstar, just like a dub chord preset, and we're going to just kind of keep this beat going in the background so I've got some sort of a sense of, rhythm here. I'm just going to go to the sampler page on the MPC Live, and I've already got the dub chords. I've already got a cable coming out of the back of the Virus, and this cable is going in to the MPC Live so we can get, a level from the Virus and just start sampling things right in. Hey, what's happening, Martin? Bring that quasi MIDI. Hey, it's funny that you mentioned that because we're going to be working in the key of C minor today. I normally work a lot in the key of F minor, but today we're going to be working in the key of C minor. And the quasi MIDI revolution, when you randomize like its synth patterns that are built into it, it sort of spits those out in the key of C minor. And I've got a little spot over here on the left, and it was like everything I could do to just wrangle this gear and not add something else to this stream today, but I really did think heavily about trying to bring out the quasi MIDI revolution and see if we could get that going today. Fantastic, good stuff. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and start. This could be a long one today. I'm not exactly sure. I'm going to try to take my time each step of the way here, and we're going to build this up, from pretty much scratch. The drum beat that we're hearing now is just like one of the grooves that's built in to my digit drums pack for the model samples, and we're going to be turning this beat into like a more traditional 4 on the floor beat in just a little bit. For now, it's just kind of keeping our tempo, which is 104 beats per minute today. Again, we're going to be working in the key of C minor today, not F minor like I normally work in. And I'm going to go ahead and just start sampling in some Dub Techno chords. They sound like this. Hope you guys can hear that coming through okay. And we'll get the mix situated as we start actually building something in a moment. But what I want to do is I want to sample enough hits of this Dub Techno chord that we get variations of it. The chord itself is like running through an LFO and moving the filter and doing some stuff like that. So hopefully, as I hit the chord a few different times, we will get some different variations of that chord. And this is why we're going to be sampling them into the MPC Live so that we can really you'll see what I mean in just a moment, that we can get a really sort of evolved and organic and maybe unexpected type of chord progression, not progression, but chord samples evolving. And then once we sample out of the Virus, we can also use that again in other capacities during the jam. So my number one goal here to start us off is to get at least 8 different chord stab variations sampled into the MPC Live for us to start editing. I'm just going to hit the arm button on the MPC Live and take a sip of coffee. Hear how we're getting variations, how the filter cutoff is a little bit different each time I hit the chord. We're getting quite a few open variations. What I'd like is a more closed variation still. More closed down there. Gonna let those tails, you know, ring out so that we get whatever reverb and delay is built into the preset, baked into these samples. Another nice low one, fantastic. I need a combination of sort of filter closed and filter open chords here. Getting plenty of variations of it wide open. Let me see if I can move the filter and get a little bit more closed variation. Too closed. Let's try again. Nice. And not touch that filter until it rings out all the way. Get a couple more. Nice and low, yeah. Again, I need at least 8 different variations that I can chop out here. Yeah, very Dean chord that, right? Totally. This is that dub chord vibe that I'm just so into. All right. That's probably going to do it. I'm going to go ahead and stop at this time. Again, our master clock today is, excuse me about that, is the iPad here. And that's running AUM. And one thing that I'd like to remember to point out right at the beginning is that when you're using AUM on an iPad for your MIDI clock master, if you go into the menu in the upper right section, there's a settings tab. And what you want is you want to have your buffer size as absolute low as your iPad can handle. We're currently here, we're at a buffer size of 64. That's the lowest it can go. And you also want to turn on the high quality measurement mode. You really want to turn that on to get everything and the buffer as low as possible, you know, without any cracks or popping in your iPad. That's going to get everything as tight in the sync as possible. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and label that we've recorded here. I'm going to call this C minor dub chords. Again, I'm going to try to go slow today and not push myself to go super quickly. We're just going to call this, 01, do it, cool. And then we'll keep that. Now if I go to the, if I go to the menu and I go to sample edit, we can see there's like 1, 2, 3, 4. There's like 13 different variations of the chord sample that I've got in here currently. We can go ahead and make this recording a little bit louder by, it's one of the things I love about the MPC Live and the way of like recording and editing in these boxes is you've got all of the tools that you need, you know, to edit your samples right here in the box. So I'm able to make everything a little bit louder right off the jump. And now what I need to do is I need to copy these out so that we have, you know, a lot of different variations that I don't want, you know, each chord sample to have, you know, 13 chords in it. I need to be able to trim these out. And there may be, you know, quicker or easier ways to do this, but this is how I do it, and it works for me really well. We're just going to go ahead and click the process button, and we can scroll to get to all these different variation, you know, options inside of here. Not variations really, but effect options. And one of them is just the option to copy the sample to a new sample. So it's just going to label that, you know, chords 02, and I'm going to do that a bunch of times. C minor chords 03, do it. C minor chords 04, do it. 05, do it. So I'm just copying this out so that I've got several different variations of the actual chords. And I'm going to do that a few more times than I actually need to do as well, so that we always have like a backup of that main recording, in a, you know, keep that in a non-destructive fashion. Okay, so now I just need to go through and listen to these chord samples and keep the ones that we want to keep. We're going to go ahead and start doing that now. And this is going to take a little bit of time. I have to go in and edit 8, samples out here. So if you'd like to grab a cup of coffee or maybe take a bathroom break, this would be a great time to do that, as this editing is probably going to take a little bit of a while. Let me go ahead and move the start point in here. Might be a little bit quicker if I get the macros working for us today as well. Maybe not though. Oops. Cool. Okay, so now I can go in here and I can go process and I can go discard and I can delete that extra little bit of air around our sample so that we just have, what am I doing? There we go. Just checking the end of that sound. Yeah, fantastic. So we're just going to keep that. Dub chords 01. And now I'm just going to bring up dub chords 02. And maybe vary this by bringing in one of those closed filter cutoff ones towards the end here. And just start sort of zooming in on these so that I can get right in on the beginning of the sample. All right. See how that sounds. Yeah, that sounds really great. So I'm just going to continue doing that. That was dub chords 2. So now I'm going to work with dub chords 3. I'm going to pick another one from the beginning where the filter was a little bit more open, and I'm going to start trimming that one out. We're going to zoom in on the beginning of that a bit more here. Whoops. There you go. We're going to move that start point right in there. All right, and we're going to process and discard that. Cool. Let's take a listen to that one. Yeah, see how they're all just a tiny little bit different? That one, when the filter was a little bit more open, we get a little bit more of the delay coming through on that one. Now I'm going to grab another one from the end instead of the beginning. So these are a little bit more closed down on the filter. I'm going to start zooming in on this and trimming it right at the beginning of the sound. Process and discard. Cool, let's hear that one. Fantastic. That's number 4. I'm going to go ahead and do number 5 here. I'm going to get a sort of closed down sounding one here. Yeah, I like that one. Oh, whoops, I got to get that endpoint in. And we'll go process, discard. Start editing this out. I'm just getting right in here at the downbeat where these samples start here. All right. The actual sampling part itself is usually, the most tedious part of these streams. So thank you for your patience, everyone. Now we're going to do number 6. I'll try to find another closed down one a little more. Not quite as open, I like that one. Okay. Process and discard. Boy, it is getting warm in LA. I'll tell you what, I'm going to turn the air conditioner on a little higher. If you guys hear a rumble in the background today, that's my air conditioner. Sorry about that. It really just cannot be avoided for my sanity and also for the sake of the gear. Got to keep it cool. All right, let's check this one out. Whoops. This one is going to be number 6. Yeah, a nice closed down one. Take a second and check in with the chat. What's happening, Ed? Yeah, no Digitac today. I thought about it actually, but we're using sort of the model samples today in the same way that I would, potentially use a Digitac. And I usually, haven't really been getting this into the live streams, but I've got so many sound banks for it and sounds, and it's such a great machine that I thought we'd go ahead and use the model samples today. Let's go ahead and do, we need 2 more chords here. This is number 7. Yeah, it's maybe. Yeah, that's nice. Let's get that one and process and discard. Process and discard. Whoops. And start zooming in on the beginning of that. Get right in there. And listen to this one. Cool. Yeah, we just need one more to get us started today. And let's grab, let's see, maybe this one? Maybe a little bit more open one. Maybe this one. Yeah, that's a pretty wide open one. We definitely want something that's wide open for sure. Okay, cool. So process and discard. And then let's start zooming into the beginning of this guy here. Did I get it right at the beginning? Oh, stop that. Yeah, we're good there. Okay, cool deal. So now what we've got, and thanks for your patience, everyone. What we've got is we've got 8 individual C minor chord samples now inside of the AKAI. And what we're going to do is we're going to use 2 different pads, and we're going to load 4 samples onto each pad. And we're going to tell the MPC that it should play back those samples randomly. That whenever I hit a pad, it should randomly select one of the 4 samples that are on that pad. And what does this do exactly? Well, the sound itself inside of the Darkstar has a LFO on the filter, and that means that there's a slow, just kind of gentle opening and closing of the, the filter cutoff on this sound, and it's, the brain like locks into that LFO, and you can really, hear the evolution as it opens and closes the filter cutoff in that even and expected manner. But here we, kind of put our own like vibe on it to where we don't necessarily know exactly how that chord is going to sound every time it comes out. It's not going to lock us into that really even sounding flow, and potentially give us a little bit more of an interest in the chords here. And that's what we're really, working on today. I've got the Eventide Micro Pitch Delay pedal plugged into one of the external outputs of the MPC so that we can run these chords through this pedal and add even more texture and life to them as they're evolving. Let's get that set up. Okay, all I need to do is to, let's see here, we're going to go into the menu and we're going to go to Program Edit. I'm just going to select the first pad here, and I'm going to choose Samples. There's actually 4 tabs to the Samples page. Sorry that I can't get, really zoomed in on everything today. It was hard enough to get everything in the shot. Speaking of that, though, I am working on a way to get more cameras in these live streams so that hopefully in the future we will be able to get a little bit closer on some of these pieces of gear as we're working with them. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to load 4 of those dub samples onto the first pad here. I'm going to load dub chords 1, 2, 3, and 4 onto this one. Then I'm going to pick the next pad, and I'm going to load dub chords 5, and 6, and 7, and 8. Okay, fantastic. And now if we go back to the program and we go to the master page of the program, there's an option here which says layer play, and it will allow me to choose, excuse me, where is it? Come on now. There we go. Random. And what this does is exactly what I said. When I hit the pads now, it's going to choose these between the samples all randomly. I'm also going to make the polyphony on this bank mono so that these pads wouldn't ever play over each other. Okay, so if I hit the first pad now, the second pad is working as expected. What have I done wrong here? Let's see if I can fix this. I'm having a little bit of an issue with the first pad not wanting to play. That's probably, what do I have, like a pad mute going on or something? Let's find out. Track mute. Nope, that was wrong. Oh boy, here we go. I'll get it sorted. Just give me 1 second here. Okay, there we go. Fantastic. And since I fixed that, I'm going to go ahead and save at this time as well. So if anything were to go wrong, I've got kind of like a fixed state to go back to. I'm going to take 1 second and try to check in with the chat because I know I'm, missing a lot here. All right, thanks for hanging out, everyone. It's taking just a little bit of time to save as it's, embedding all of these samples into the project that we just recorded. Excuse me. Okay, come on and finish saving there. Okay, so now we notice that when I hit the first pad, we get different chord stabs that are coming out of that pad. And it's kind of unexpected as to which, version of the chord is coming out. And the same is true for pad 2. That one seems to not be changing yet. There we go. So I can go back and forth between these two pads now and really mix it up, right? It's just going to be different. And we don't know whether that filter is going to be, more closed, more open, kind of halfway open, halfway closed. And this gives us a vibe that you can't necessarily just lock into as easily as you would if an LFO was just, opening and closing that filter in real time. What let's do is let's go ahead and get our clock going here. Bring our drum machine volume up here. Yeah, cool. What I want to do is I want to make this pattern, it's currently a 4-bar pattern, and it's just triggering the very first pad every 4 bars. What I wanted to do, what I wanted to do is I want it to be an 8-bar pattern instead of a 4-bar pattern. And let's see here. Whoops. And on the beginning of bar 5, I wanted to hit our second pad instead of our first pad. There we go. So on bar 5, I'm just going to put an A2. So on the beginning of the downbeat of measure 1, it's going to trigger the first pad. And on the beginning of the downbeat of measure 5, it's going to trigger that second pad. And every 8 bars, it's just going to keep, triggering our samples every 4 bars. So we can go ahead and press play on our master clock. Or maybe not. Press play on the master clock here, which again gets let me actually take a break and explain how we're doing that, because nothing is synced via Ableton Link yet or anything like that. It's all hardware MIDI. So this iPad here is running to an audio interface. It's the Audio Hub 2x4 from Novation, and plugged into that is an AKAI Multimedia iRig MIDI 2. And this basically just allows me to get 5-pin MIDI out of the iPad. So I've plugged this into the Audio Hub's USB hub. If you're not using, the Audio Hub 2x4, you'll just plug the iRig into the powered USB hub that is plugged into your iPad. Now I'm taking a 5-pin MIDI out of the iRig, and I'm running that into the MIDI Solutions T8 MIDI through box. Now we normally use, for this kind of stuff, I like to use just the smaller one, the MIDI through. It's like a 1 in and 4 MIDI channels out. This is the exact same idea as that. It's just 1 MIDI in, and then you've got 8 MIDI out duplicates of that exact same channel. It doesn't need power. It's powered when you plug in the very first MIDI connection. So it's actually being powered from the iPad, or from the power of the audio interface, rather, maybe. Okay, and so we've got MIDI coming out of the MIDI Solutions T8, and that's going into the AKAI MPC Live. So when I start the clock on OM, we get that MIDI signal starting the MPC Live. We've also got a MIDI cable coming into the Yamaha SU700, starting the clock, and I've got a MIDI cable coming into the Electron model samples here, which starts the clock. I've also got an extra MIDI cable going over here to the Virus Darkstar, and that starts the clock and keeps the virus in sync with all of this. So then this iPad here isn't being synced in any way at all at this time. So all of the hardware, except for the Eurorack, is currently just synced up via 5-pin MIDI. Again, for those of you who are just joining or maybe tuning in late, the Eurorack that we're hopefully going to be adding some percussion sounds from in a little bit is being synced to this system wirelessly today using the Circuit Happy ML2 clock generator module, which has it generates its own Wi-Fi hotspot, and then I use the network from the iPad, and I connect to the module's hotspot. They're just right next to each other, so I don't really have like lag or like router drops, because the Wi-Fi signal is coming right from that module. We're going to get into that in just a little bit, though. All right, so currently we've got it so that when I press play, we've got a little beat coming out of the model samples, and we've got some chords here that are coming out of the AKAI. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that we're sending these chords now. I want to make sure that we're sending these from the external outputs, not the main outputs, because I've got the main outputs just sent to my mixer. We're routing all of this. There's no mixer on the desk today, so sorry for that. It's under the table. I have a really large 22-channel Soundcraft mixer. And that's where all the volumes of these are being routed today. Let's see here. So what I'd like to do is take the pattern in the model samples here and copy it into like another spot and get it, or rather just, I think I've already done that rather, but get this one into more of a 4 on the floor pattern that's more, traditional to like Dub Techno that we can start working with. Oh wait, the chords, right. So before I do that, I'm just going to get the drum machine and the chords, going a little more how we want them. But I want to make sure that those chords that we sampled are going out the external output into the micro pitch pedal, so we can get a little bit of, more delay and more reverb and more texture on those. So I'll go to the routing here, and I'm going to just assign this pad to outputs 3 outputs 3 and 4, and I'll do that with both of those. Awesome. Okay, so now what we're hearing is we're hearing these chords coming out of the external output of the AKAI, and they're going directly through this micro pitch delay pedal. If I, mute the pedal, we can just hear our chords. But if I turn that pedal on, can you hear what a difference? It's still going, right? It's this big, airy, it almost like, doubles the size, basically, in my mind, of these dub chords, right? I mean, they were pretty good sounding to begin with, but we add that extra layer of delay and reverb and texture from the Eventide Micro Pitch Delay pedal. My God. Okay, so that's a lot more what I want the chords to sound like. And there's a neat, a really neat feature in the most recent firmware upgrade to the AKAI MPC Live that's going to allow us to like filter and even decimate these chords in real time as we get going, and that's going to be awesome. But what let's do, let's go ahead and work on this drum beat just a little bit. Start kind of getting these levels where they need to be. Hey, what's happening, Holonic Systems? Hey, what's happening, Vortex? Thanks for tuning in, everyone. All right. So what let's do is let's just kind of mute these other pads here. And this kick drum pattern isn't really, you know, much of a 4 on the floor type of a part, but more of like a broken beat, kind of a drum sound. And what let's do is fix that and make it more of a 4 on the floor type of kick drum pattern. And let's dub this out, you guys. Let's get to dubbing. All right. So this is a 606 drum kit kind of that I've got put together on the Digit Drums sound bank that I put together for the model samples. Leave those hi-hats in there. And let's fix this clap also. It's going kind of on a half beat, and we don't really want that. Okay, let's see here. I'm going to want to turn the volume of my chords down just a little bit. Sort of tuck them so they're not quite fighting the drums so hard. Maybe there. We'll adjust that as needed. All right. What let's do is let's try to be brave and let's try to go ahead and get the Eurorack started today. All we need to do is we just need to make sure that the network here that this iPad is on is the network that the Circuit Happy ML2 module is putting out. And I'm pretty sure we are. We're just going to double check that. Yes, we are on the Wi-Fi network. This iPad is on the Wi-Fi network of this module here. Now, one of the things that kind of thwarts me a little bit is that I'm colorblind. So any of these modules that have like states where they're green or red, you know, for you to know what that means, it's a little bit difficult for me personally to get that sorted. But what I've done is I've pressed play over here on the Circuit Happy ML2, and we've added a clap here. Turn that down. And the clap is coming out of my Eurorack module, my Eurorack system. Here I can bring in a hi-hat. And I'm not going to worry about like trying to combine the melodics from my Eurorack system today with the melodics of this other stuff that we're working on. But I figured that it might be neat to have some extra percussion in the background that we could kind of bring in and out. And so I really, really, really love this module for that. I mean, we're literally completely in sync here. All of these boxes are running, right? I've got the whole point of the stream today is, you know, dub techno versus breaks. And what I've got is I've got some vintage break beats that are already loaded up in this vintage Yamaha SU700 sampler. I actually bought one of these new when they came out in the mid to early 90s. Got a lot of use out of it, built a lot of tracks and jams out of it. And over the years, it, you know, saw a lot of use and the knobs kind of wore out on that particular unit. I ended up having to get rid of that one. But a few years ago, I found this one for sale on eBay. I knew it was going to have that same problem as my old one with the knobs just all over the place to the point of it's just not really usable. But this one has all of the extras, like extra outputs on the back and the ability to plug in an SCSI storage device. So I did pick this one up used, and I took it to my local guy and had him replace all of the knobs on this one. It wasn't cheap, but this is a really, really fun sampler with a fond place in my heart. And so we can bring in some cool breaks just by turning tracks on and off this sampler. One of the things about this sampler, let's see here. I don't really have like a main. I guess the thing here is I need like I really wish that the mixer was somehow like on top so that I could adjust the, you know, the volumes really, really easily. Yeah, that doesn't do it, does it? All right. But basically, I can bring in these. Okay, we're just going to go ahead and stop everything rather so I don't have to talk over it. I'm going to stop this as well. Cool. Okay, so basically, my overhead, cool. The Yamaha SU700 is such a strange sampler, but for those who have actually used one, it probably has a really fond place in your heart. And I'm going to try to do a really quick overview of why this is such a special sampler, even though it's so ridiculously limited. What we've got is we've got 4 banks to work with, okay? Each bank has these tracks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's a total of 40 tracks that you can get going inside of this box, okay? The first 2 tracks in each bank are loop tracks, and that means we can load a loop onto those tracks, and it will either slice up that loop in equal increments and try to stretch it to the tempo, or you can set it to change pitch, and it will just change the pitch as you change the speed. The next 4 are called composed loops, and basically what we can do is we can load one-shot samples onto these pads, and then we can program them out, program little patterns, like program a hi-hat pattern here, program a ride pattern here, whatever. And the last 4 tracks are called free tracks, and basically what we can use these for is we can load one-shots onto these, or like effect sounds, or vocal samples, anything we want, and we can trigger these in real time, but we're not able to create like programmed information with the free tracks. So for instance, each bank has 4 of those free tracks. Those are pretty much wasted tracks unless you're actually hitting things in real time. So basically you've got 6 tracks that can create and help you with looping on each bank. You can get all those going at the same time, but say if I'm in bank 4 and I want to mute the tracks that are on bank 1, well, suddenly that becomes a little bit difficult. This machine doesn't have the modern amenity of patterns per se, where you can like set up a whole bunch of stuff and then save that as a pattern, and then set up a whole bunch of other stuff and save that as like pattern 2, and then go back and forth between them. You can't do that with this box. You literally can set up basically like one pattern where everything is going, and then you can basically mute things on and off in real time. Now, by today's standards, that's really, really dated, and why would I be even interested at all in a box like this and having it in a modern workflow? Well, the neat thing about this is that once we load samples into it, and this was actually the first box that I owned that did anything like this, and that is we've got individual settings for EQ, filter, and effects for every single pad. I've came from a workflow of using like AKAI samplers before this, like the AKAI S2800, I believe, where lining up samples across a key bed, but you certainly do not have any sort of EQ per sample. So to actually have control over the low gain, you've got control over the low frequency as well, so you can cut off a lot or just a little. You've got a high gain and a high frequency, and again, these are per individual sample. You also got a filter that affects each individual sample, so I can get the groove going, and I can use the low pass filter to like filter down these beats in real time as well. So we're going to be switching back and forth between these 4 banks, and I can just kind of turn on and off these breakbeats that I've already got loaded into this. Let's go ahead and get everything going again if we can. Maybe I can do that by getting this going first, actually. Let's see what happens. Not so much. All right. Okay. See if I can get our Eurorack going again. This is where the, the colors kind of thwart me. I'm sure there's some sort of, information here on the color of this button that's telling me like where I need to press or something like that. Not where, but when. But I kind of can't really tell between like the red and the green states of this one. So hopefully we'll just get this going again and then leave it going in the session. It's a little bit difficult for me sometimes to, come on, don't fight me. There we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and see if I can't get this iPad here into the mix. Now that we've got some music going, can you guys still hear my voice okay? Am I too loud, or is the music too loud, or is the music too soft, or anything like that? Yes, that is a great question, Connor. The module can absolutely join a network as well. You don't need to use it as its own Wi-Fi hotspot. It can join your network as well. I just don't have a super stable connection, and so I find it's easier to use its hotspot rather than, my own network when I'm syncing these two devices, because they're really close together, you know what I mean? Whereas my Wi-Fi hotspot is like in the next room, and I don't have a hard wire into it. All right. Yeah, and I really wish, I'm seeing people talking about risers and stuff as well. I really wanted to get actually more gear into the setup today. But as I start, building shelves and, getting things taller in here, it's harder to light the things underneath it. And it just really becomes hard for you guys to see what I'm doing and talking about. So I'm trying to keep it as easy to see on these live streams as possible. So here we've got an iPad running Beatmaker 3, which is my favorite DAW on the iPad. And I've got a whole bunch of like playable sounds in here that I've got already in the key of F minor, which is like my favorite key to write in. But we're writing in C minor today. So if we just bring this semitone on these pads down from F to C, I'm now playing in the key of C minor. And we can see if maybe any of these sounds that I've got in here ready to go might sort of slot with what we're creating. Cool. So here's a break beat that I just brought in, right? I could filter this down, maybe make it a little bit more cool and lo-fi sounding, kind of tuck it behind our drums. People don't typically blend like breaks type of, beats with Dub Techno. And I really like both of these vibes, and I thought, let's definitely mash these up and, kind of get some big kick drums and 4/4 style beats with that rhythmic action of the breaks behind them. But typically, you're going to get some, clashing in the low frequency content from that big, 4 on the floor kick drum and these breaks, which is, again, one of the benefits of using the box like this Yamaha here, is I can go through each of these breaks and remove enough low frequencies so that the break isn't actually conflicting with the low end of the kick drum. And I've already done that here. It's also got a roll feature, so we can, let's see here, I can set this quantized to maybe 16th notes, and I can roll this drum machine here, kind of old school, not drum machine, but sample. I can even move the filter while I'm doing that, right? One, two, three, and so you can kind of do that sort of a deal with it. You can mute these at any time. Change a different loop, right? I think what we're missing here is kind of like a low frequency, sort of kick drum. Not kick drum, but sort of bass that I'm gonna make with a kick drum rather. Getting ahead of myself. So I think what we need is like some low frequency content. Everything sounds loud and clear. Hey, thank you very much, 30 Linker. I appreciate that. Thanks, Spider. All right. I'm bringing in a few more percussion sounds from the Eurorack. A bit of ride cymbal from the Eurorack as well. 2, 3, bring it in. You can mess with the pitch of that ride cymbal. Maybe choose a different ride cymbal. There we go. All right. I really love being able to use an iPad like this with Beatmaker 3. You can set up, your own custom sound presets. I've got lots of tutorials on how to build sounds in here by, multi-sampling like a synthesizer or using like single cycle waveforms. You can make really nice sounding sounds with really, beautiful tones using like the built-in reverbs and stuff. And you can, get these to stick to a scale. So as long as you know the key that you're working in, today we're working in C minor. So I've got the, the scale here set to C pentatonic minor. I really like just getting a nice melodic sound, that just gels with what you're creating and be able to just jam on that. All right. So what let's do is go ahead and stop for now and go ahead and get our clock stopped on the Eurorack as well. What I'd like to do is try to get a sort of a bass sound going today. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the built-in kick drum synthesizer in the AKAI to get that to happen. A good friend of mine, Gaz, who may be in the chat today, was like, dude, seriously, don't sleep on that kick drum synthesizer in the MPCs because it is fat. And I was kind of like, well, I got plenty of kick drums. I don't need any more kick drums. I don't need any more of this. And he was like, I'm telling you, don't sleep on that kick synth. It is hot. You can make bass sounds with it as well, like those 808 kick drum bass sounds. And I'm like, all right, that's kind of got my interest. And I started playing with it. And I am telling you, friends, if you've got an AKAI MPC or an AKAI Force or something like that, the MPC 1, don't sleep on this kick drum synth because it is absolute magic. We're going to go ahead and load one up onto track 2 here. We're going to go ahead and, go to program edit. Cool. So now I've got the kick drum synth up. And there is a ton of presets that it comes with. I'm going to just turn this up a little bit more. I don't think we're getting the best level out on these presets. It's nasty, right? And there's tons and tons of presets here. Here's like a sub bass. If you're listening on your phone, you probably can't hear that at all. but like, you know, played melodically. I'm not in a key right now, but we could set that up, you know, to play to a scale. Anyhow, there's a bunch of really great presets inside of here, and I messed with it a lot. You can even set the root key, you know, like the specific root key. So I messed with it a lot, and I created a sound that sounds more like a bass than a kick drum. And we're going to go ahead and load that onto track 2 at this time. Track 2. I think I've already got it loaded onto this pad, actually. And I believe I've got the kick drum, not the kick, well, it is a kick drum, but I'm using it as a bass. So I've already got it loaded onto this pad here. And I believe I've got this coming out of the main outputs as well. Let's just double check that so that we did make sure I'm not, yeah, it's not going through this micro pitch delay, reverb, or anything like that. So now if I press play, let's see here. Okay, but it's still on that same bank though, and I really want it on its own. Cool, now I can make it on its own. Okay, good deal. We're gonna go ahead and assign that sample right here. I just want to get the, come on. I just want to get the bass sound on its own bank. Yeah, all right. What let's do is I've got, what, it's an 8-bar pattern? Right, so we're gonna want to keep that. Okay, so basically I think I'll just kind of tap in like a bass part. 2, 2, 3. Let's see if I can get it on the first try without messing this up too bad. Here we go. One time. No, it's not the vibe that I really want, I don't think, actually. So, let me see if I can... Was it not even recording that? Okay, no worries. It wasn't even recording that. Yeah, I want something like smoother and more chilled. And what I want to do is maybe just bring the level of this bass down in the mix just a little bit. Maybe just the tiniest little bit in the mix. Right, pad mixer and level. Oh, this one here. Yeah. Cool, okay. Come on now. Just trying to get the Eurorack started in sync with us again. There we go. Yeah, Beatmaker 3 is just an amazing, even if you're just using it as a playable instrument, I mean, just magic, right? I can switch between the banks, which have, you know, different instruments, and see if any of these other instruments might sound okay in key with our track here. Got like a string sound. That sounds all right. Kind of a cool sound. Cool. What I want to do is I want to use the Virus Darkstar now to play kind of like a chord riff. And this is why we, not only sampled out of it in the beginning, the chords into the MPC, so that we could still use it, but also so that we could get a little bit different variation on those chords. All right. Now we've got kind of a layer of chords that we can kind of bring in and out as well. What's happening? Chilling with 10 mil. Hey, we got AXS203. What's up? Yeah, so simple. Right on. Still needs that quasi MIDI. Yeah, right on. What's happening? Peter, thanks for tuning in. Oh, we got 2 Peters. Thanks to both of you for tuning in. All right. So we can bring our extra percussion in and out with the master volume on the Eurorack here. To change this ride sound. Cool. Now, I've got another synthesizer out today as well. This is the Audiothinges MicroMonsta. And I've got a really neat plugin here on the iPad called Riffer. And I've done some, you can't really see it on that camera angle. Maybe you can see it a little bit better on this one. I've done some videos specifically on this app. This is the new version. The original version had 1 sequencer in it. The updated version has 4 sequencers in it, but we're just using 1 sequencer today. So the app is called Riffer, and it allows me to, set up a scale. Today we're using C minor, and I've already set that up inside of Riffer. And it's just going to generate patterns for us in the key of C minor. And I've got that running through the Audiothinges MicroMonsta, and I can kind of bring that up in the mix here. All right. Okay, fantastic. Not really working there? Come on. Oh, because it's for the exactly doing what I wanted, so we're going to pass on this. There's a new... God, it's loud today. I don't have a master volume. I'm sorry, everyone. I don't have a... it's a new feature inside of the MPC that I was really hoping to get in today. But it does not seem to want to cooperate with me, and that's fine. Bring the cutoff down on the sort of lead arpeggio synth coming from the MicroMonsta here. Let's bring in a clap and change the ride. Yeah, dub with the PO33, right on. Hey, what's happening, Jonathan? Hey, what's happening, Joe Barcy? All right. Let's change the ride. I can change the pitch of the ride, or I can change the volume of the ride, or I can change the actual sample of the ride in real time, coming from the Eurorack here. Bringing ourselves a beat. And we can sort of low pass filter this beat down. Tuck it back into the mix, right? Cool. Let's go ahead and let me show you. Let's see here. What I've got is I've got a whole bunch of, not a whole bunch, I've got like 4 floppy disks here, which have sounds on them. I don't know if you guys have even ever seen floppy disks before. If you're super young, you might not have even had these, right? But the SU700 loads and saves samples onto these floppy disks. These are like 1.44 megabytes of room on one disk. So imagine if you're trying to get, you know, all of the samples for your song onto a disk, and all you've got is 1.44 megabytes. You know, you can use a 2-measure pad sample that's, you know, more than 1.44 megabytes, right? You run out of, you know, sample room in a second on something like this. But on the inside, I was able to upgrade the RAM. So this one actually has 64 megabytes of RAM. So you can actually load about 50 floppies worth of information into this. And then how would you go about saving that, right? Well, if you don't have an external drive plugged into it, you would literally start saving it, and when it fills up a floppy, it will tell you, go ahead and insert that next floppy. I mean, back in the day, I had songs that, you know, would take 4 or 5 floppy disks to save that one song, you know, 20 minutes to load it up, as you're like, okay, switch to floppy disk number 2 and I'll load those. Now switch to floppy disk number 3. I mean, it's just, you know, really tedious if you don't have an external hard drive. One of the issues, though, about the external hard drives that you can get from like way back in the 90s that'll work for something like this is that they're really large. They're like maybe 4 or 5 times as big as this one here, and they all have internal fans built into them. Now, we're talking about things that were built, you know, 20, almost 30 years ago. Those internal fans on those hard drives are like, it's like a friggin' motorcycle is running in the studio with you, right? I actually attempted to get one of those old hard drives to get set up with this SU700 originally. But it was just too loud. I mean, it was just the loudest thing in the room. I mean, you can't work when there's just going like an inch from your face when you're trying to hear the subtleties of sound. So I was able to get a little, this is an SESI to SD card, and it's got an SD card in here. The SU700 thinks that it's just a standard hard drive, and I'm able to save up to 64 megabytes of samples, per session. Obviously, it would take a lot of time to either load via floppy or to sample into it via audio that much. You can't, like, there's no USB, none of that stuff. It's old school. You can either load samples onto a floppy in 16-bit 44.1 kilohertz mono AIF, so Apple format. 16-bit 44 kilohertz mono is what this takes. So yeah, so like I spent like a day this week, finding some cool old breaks that I liked and loading those like one by one into the machine. But that's the workflow for something like this. Like when you come from way back in the day, you might, get out your records, your record player, you might sample some stuff into here, you might save those sounds like hi-hats and snares and kicks, and then you're going to save them onto these floppy disks. So you might have like a floppy disk with like shakers and rides on it. You might have a floppy disk with like C minor chords on it. You might have a floppy disk with like a noise crash on it, right? And you might have a floppy disk with like some vocal samples on it, right? So that's basically what I've got here. Is I've got these disks with these samples on them. I can go ahead and pop out the disk that's in here right now. I can load up this disk that has a noise crash sample on it, and we can try to load that crash onto one of these empty pads here. So I can go ahead and go, load volume. I can tell it that I want to load from the floppy disk and not load from the external hard drive. You can search for that, and I've already had an error. It's got a file not found error, so it's a no-go on that noise crash there. So instead of that, we'll go ahead and just skip to the next disk. I got a disk with some vocal samples here. Hopefully it can read. Actually, let me try one more thing with that last one because I really shouldn't have had an error. If you've never worked with a device that's floppy based, I can't tell you like how much fun it is the thing to actually work with stuff like this. It's really satisfying, like clicking that disk in there and popping it out with the eject button. It's a whole different like tactile experience. I know it sounds kind of lame, but it really is the thing. I think I had just done the load system wrong, and that crash will probably still be here. Yeah, it's right there, and I'm going to load that crash up onto this pad here. And now it's just loading from the disk. All we're doing is loading one sample. You'll notice we didn't get to preview the sample or anything like that. This is super old school workflow. If you had like sampled stuff off your records, you'd be loading samples off of these disks one sample at a time. Is this the ride symbol I want? Nope, not that one. Load the next one. See, it's still loading that crash even now from the floppy disk. This is old school workflow. Okay. Here it's got that sample loaded, and what I can do is on each pad, I've got control for an envelope setting. So instead of just getting a little tiny sound, I can go ahead and change the release on this pad up to maximum. So when I hit the pad, so when I'm in play mode, not mute mode, and I hit the pad, it plays that sample out in its entirety. I can go to the low gain for this sample that I've just put in. I can bring down some of the lows on that and start doing a little bit of EQ work on that sound. I can bring out any low frequencies beneath about 400. That sounds great. And what we can do is we can try to now to program this so that it happens maybe like every 8 bars. Okay, so the SU700 has like a track setup page where it will allow me to set the loop length for every single pad. And so it counts the beats. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? Like that. So if I want a 1 bar loop, I would just leave it at the default 4, 4 beats, but I want this crash to trigger every 8 bars. So I'm going to multiply, 4 times 8, and that's 32. So I'm going to set the loop length here to 32. And again, that's 32 beats, not 32 steps, okay? We'll say okay. And then, let's see. How would I do this if I'm using an external clock? I think I can go back to maybe the internal clock real fast here. Set up MIDI sync internal. Wait, what? Oh, I see. Oh my goodness. Are you kidding? Okay, so what I have done, let me just triple verify that. It looks like what I did when I did that. Yeah, okay. Okay, what I did is I accidentally erased what I had loaded in here, which is not really a big deal. I can just fix that up. It's going to take us a minute, so I'm just apologizing for the wasted time here. I just have to load our original session back up. So it's going to load now from the external hard drive, all those 8 breaks, and then I'll reload the crash correctly, and we'll have our whole system, our whole session back to where it was. Cool. Okay, so while we're waiting for that, let me see if there's anything else that I can work on this side. We've got our bass, we've got our chords. What I really want to be able to do is to filter the chords down in here. So let me see if I can figure out a way to do that. Turn the MicroMonsta off as well. Oh, I see. That didn't get reset with the right. There we go. And now it will. Yeah. Okay, so it's got our project over here loaded now. Fantastic. And one of the anomalies about this machine, and this is sort of like harkens back to like, old school versus new school stuff. Today when we buy a box, like if you go out and you buy a model samples, a few months from now there'll be a firmware update that'll fix some of the problems that you've maybe encountered with it. A few months later there'll be like another firmware update so you can just download and drop into the machine real quick. But for something like, this, it doesn't connect. There's no USB. You don't plug it into your computer and just download new firmware. For something like this, when the companies would release stuff like this in the 90s, maybe find some bugs, a few months or a year later, their only option would be to release a new operating system on a chip that you would typically have to buy. You would typically have to open up your unit, put that chip in there, do some, maybe serious backup of everything you've got, like via Midi or something. But I'm not sure where I was going with that. But yeah, so now we don't really have that that issue that we used to have with the firmware. They just slap it out and we just download it. But one of the issues, anomalies, that's where I was going with this machine, is that it doesn't remember the MIDI sync settings, even when you save that. So every time I load or turn it on, I have to go into the MIDI sync menu and tell it that I want it to sync to external clock and not internal clock. And I've done that now. So we should get this starting up with our project now. Cool. And I still want to get that crash in. So what I accidentally did, was delete the whole project when I was trying to load that crash symbol. But if I do it correctly this time, we can avoid all of that nonsense. All right. And I could just put that here, and we can load it from the floppy disk. And going to put that noise crash right there. What I'll do is we'll just go and put that on the downbeat of every 8 bars so that I've got kind of like a grid that I can stick to when I'm sort of like performing with these tools here. Just going to let that load. Again, since we're using Riffer to control the audio Audiothinges MicroMonsta, it's creating a new pattern every 8 bars to send out to this lead sound, and that's going to always be in key because the Riffer app knows that we're writing in the key of C minor. Okay, fantastic. So now I just need to put the release time on this back to maximum, maybe bring the level down a tiny little bit, and take some lows off of this sound real quick, maybe beneath about 400 hertz. Fantastic. And maybe what we'll do now actually is go ahead and save. Save as breaks one. And one of the weird things also is like it kind of gives you the heebie-jeebies every time you save, because it doesn't really save like over what you've already got. It literally deletes the information that you've saved, and then it saves fresh. So if anything were to go wrong, like you have to say okay to clear all, and it's going to clear your project in the hard drive before it saves, you know, into that slot again. That can be a little bit, you know, overwhelming maybe, being nervous about it clearing your information, like if there's an error along the way, but I haven't really encountered that. So we're just going to get that to save. All right, and what I really wanted though was I really wanted to be able to get to filter these chords down, and so let's see if we can't just make that happen while I'm waiting on this over here. Okay, so if I go back to menu and then go back to program edit. Having some sort of an issue with that second pad already. I'm not sure what that's about, but we'll figure it out. Yeah, okay. I wonder why that's doing that. I'm not sure, because when I hit it, it doesn't. So it's actually on the first pad that's causing that right there. Let's figure that out, why it's doing that. Maybe it's an envelope setting that I screwed up or something. That's not right. Let's figure this out. I'm not really sure why we're getting that issue. What let's do then to get around that is let's go ahead and just copy this pad here onto, let's see. Okay, and then just change those samples real fast. Program edit, samples, second page. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, there we go. I'm not really sure what was that, doing that, but we got a workaround there. Now, our chord should be fixed, right? 2, 3, and yeah, okay. Let everything kind of, yeah, re-catch up to us there. There we go. Okay. Fantastic. Now I just want to get to filter these chords down. We're almost there. Is this per pad or per bank? I want it to be... Pretty sure this is what I want. Let's find out. Yes, finally. Okay. I've got a low-pass filter now on this bank of chords in the MPC. I think. It doesn't appear to be working as such. put it here instead. If I can just get this to work, it'll be so cool. I think I've got it now. I'm just trying to get a low pass filter on these chords so that I can kind of tuck them back as needed. There we go. So that we don't get that big, huge open one all the time, and that I can sculpt it. Yeah, and tuck it back so that we can focus more on some other sounds like the breaks. Okay, gonna check on this level here. Gonna mix it to that kick drum. Get my volume on the headphones a tiny little bit louder there, and maybe bring these hi-hats down in volume. Oh, come on. Just come on back, Eurorack, you can do it. There we go. All right, this is sounding pretty good. I apologize for not checking in with the chat for quite some time, just trying to get this sort of situated for us today. Here I can really tuck those chords back in the mix now with that low pass filter. Let's bring in this ride, drop this clap. And let's bring in some more percussion over here. Cool. Bring that clap down.
I'm gonna check in with the chat a little bit. Hey, what's happening? We got Super U in the chat. We got Expectas in the chat. We got Grid Mode in the chat. Thanks for tuning in and joining me, everyone. All right. Yeah, good memories of the SU700, right? Yeah, it's the Yamaha SU700. It's got a super awesome filter cutoff in it. Let's filter this drum back up. Love this old school filter. Hey, what's happening, Original Synth? Thanks for tuning in. All right. Still have the RS7000. Yeah, right on. I always wanted to, like, there was another one that went next to the SU700. It was like a RMX, something like that. It's kind of the same form factor as this one. Looked really neat. And back in the 90s especially, I always really had a lot of gas for that one. So for those of you who might just be tuning in, we've got all of these pieces of gear in sync today. The iPad here is running an app called and it is the master clock for today's session. It's also running the Riffer app, which is randomly giving us a pattern to the MicroMonstas, to the MicroMonsta from Audiothinges. So again, we're using an app called Riffer. The Riffer app is from a company called Audio Modern. And every 8 bars, it's sort of randomly spitting out a new melodic pattern to the MicroMonsta over here. Comes another pattern. It's subtle to hear, you know, because the sound itself doesn't change, but the pattern changes. There's 5, 6, 7, 2, 3, 4, 8, 2. We're going to change that pattern. Here, those melodics are a little bit different now, and it's just kind of evolving. I really love the Riffer app, and if you've got an iPad and some hardware and you haven't seen my videos on the Riffer app, definitely check that out. I have 2 different videos, one on the original version where it has 1 sequencer, and then one on the updated version where you've got 4 different sequencers. You can get those all on the same key and sequence different pieces of gear. We've got the Eurorack in sync with all of this today. Here I'll be able to bring in more sounds from the Eurorack. More drum and percussion sounds, for instance. And this is in sync wirelessly with the whole system using a very special module. It's just a small 2 HP module from a company called Circuit Happy. And the module is ML1. It spits out its own Wi-Fi network, which I can connect to using the iPads. And then we've got everything in sync wirelessly using Ableton Link. I've got some chords that I sampled into the AKAI MPC Live from the Darkstar. We can kind of bring those up in the mix a little bit. Just filtering those down. I've also got another iPad out today. This one is just an older iPad Air 2, and it's running Beatmaker 3. I've got a sound that I'm, custom made in here, and I've got it set to the same scale that we're working with. So I kind of can't hit a wrong note. Even play chords with these, and everything will be in key. If you can just kind of come up with patterns to repeat, then you're good to go. in a chord, arpeggio here from the Darkstar. We can sort of fade out the arpeggio here by bringing the filter down on it. We can bring in a break here from the SU700. We've got a bass today that I created using the kick drum synthesizer inside of the MPC Live. Kind of was able to tune that to our root note. Sample that out, so I've got a bass line coming from the MPC Live as well. Our main chord stabs are coming out of the secondary output of the MPC Live, and they're being run through the Eventide Micro Pitch Delay to give them a lot more reverb and space in the mix. Hey, what's happening, Si? Thanks for tuning in. I actually have the AKAI Force sitting right down beneath the desk here. I definitely haven't sold it. There's just not enough room for me to have everything set up at the same time. Hey, what's happening, Shoons? some strings here. Alright, just want to check in with the chat here, see if I'm missing anything. Hey, cool ride on original synth. All in the box is awesome as well. Yeah, external MIDI control. Just having a controller even in the box, just having like a simple MIDI controller to add to that can really take it to the next level for sure. Yeah, the Force would be a great center of the setup, Super Ju, for sure. All right. Well, I think we're going to get ready to go ahead and start, wrapping it up for the day. We've put together a pretty interesting, malleable groove today. We've got my Eurorack in sync wirelessly with all of the gear over Ableton Link today, using the Circuit Happy ML2 module. I really like being able to kind of have this on the side. So this is sort of because I have a lot more customization in these sounds, like in real time. So this is kind of a neat one. We can bring in a clap here. Change the sound. There we go. Can bring in, like an open hi-hat. Ride cymbal back in. If anyone has any questions at all about the setup or about, music production in general, now would be a great time to ask those in the chat. I'll do my best to answer any questions that come up. It's always so hard to mix on headphones on these live streams. These headphones specifically aren't exactly meant for mixing, if you get my drift. But definitely need something with that mic. Hey, what's happening, Jim? That's a great question. Is there swing and shuffle on the Ableton Link? I would really like to say yes, there is. But now that I start thinking about it, I also don't want to say no, there isn't, because maybe I'm wrong there too. But now that you mention it, I don't really think we get swing over Ableton Link per se. Just like, for instance, if I have like any drum machine, like if I have an AKAI, if I have like a Roland TR8 here or something, and I set the swing on that to be a really high swing, it's not going to affect the MIDI clock to the other pieces of gear and get those to swing. So I would have to set the swing, I think, individually inside of each box. something like, you know, drum loops inside of the SU700, I can't really put a swing on that because it's just pre-recorded audio. We could potentially add maybe more swing to something like the drums coming out of the model samples, but that's really only going to affect like the hi-hat sound that are on the 16th notes, and we're not really going to get swing on the kick or the clap per se. I could also kind of adjust the swing on the MPC Live, but the chords are hitting on the downbeat, so you're not really going to hear the swing on that either. I don't really know. That's a great question. Is there swing over Ableton Link? That's a really... I don't think that there is the thing. I want to say no. Yeah, so no swing at all here. I have like definitely some kind of go-to settings that I like to use for swing, like in different boxes. Like I really like to crank the swing up in the Digitac to about 59 or 60% and really swing it. But I find that it's, you know, easier done at a slower tempo than at a faster tempo. The slower you go, like the more swing you can, at least I feel that I can add, you know. But there's no swing at all here. No swing at all in the Eurorack setup. Yeah, so completely just straight today. That's another reason why maybe adding some, you know, drum beats or, you know, breaks specifically to something like this can help with the vibe. Because you kind of get that, just that tiny little bit of swagger and swing to play off of the really steady 4/4 drum beat in the background. I find that when I'm using the iPad to play Beatmaker as an instrument like this, again, you just get a sound that you like, and you get Beatmaker to tune that sound to the key that you're working in, so we can't hit a wrong note. But I find that using it this way is just like a magic way to use an iPad and to use Beatmaker 3. You don't really need to even be like a player. All you need to do is, you know, maybe be able to repeat the pattern you've just played a couple of times to make it sound a little bit more consistent. Then repeat that. And then repeat that. And then repeat that. Then maybe take a rest. 2, 3, do it again. And again. And then one more time. And then take that rest. All right. Ooh, I love that. Yeah, I'm adding some swing on the chorus. That's fantastic, Jim. Right on. The Retro Kits 006 has swing and micro adjustment too. Gonna need to look into that, Original Synth. Thank you for the tip. I really appreciate that. Is that the new MPC? Nope, this is just the standard MPC 1. MPC Live, the first edition. Need a few things here. The thing with the MPCs is I don't really understand personally why they put out an MPC Live II. It's from all the videos that I've watched, the only thing that I can see that's actually different between the MPC-1 here and that MPC-2 is that it has a crappy little speaker in the front that makes the unit bigger and more heavy to take around. I mean, let's be real, you guys. I'm probably not going to be using like a built-in speaker to any of these pieces of gear. I don't think that really makes it more portable. Personally, you know, the sound that you're going to get out of there. I mean, come on, is anybody really putting together hits with like a built-in 2-inch speaker bar? The software is exactly the same. The basic MPC software is the same in all of these boxes. The MPC Live, the MPC2, the MPC1, the AKAI Force, the MPC X. It's like bastardized versions of the exact same software. So it's not like the MPC2 has any features that the MPC1 doesn't have other than, you know, that speaker bar. If you guys know of like some big thing, drop that in the chat. Oh, it does this that the MPC, you know, Live doesn't. But there isn't anything that I know of. It's just that stupid little speaker bar and something to make you feel like, oh, now I've got the old one when you're using the original. I don't know why AKAI is putting out new boxes instead of just focusing on fixing their firmware. They've been doing that too, don't get me wrong. We can now use, you know, these boxes how they're supposed to be used with proper Midi in and out, you know. What is the reverb on the Dub Techno? Yeah, that's right. That is a great question, Original Sense, and I'm glad that you brought that up. Let me, all right. Just gonna turn a few more of these other tracks off here. We're still gonna hear the bass, I think. I'm not sure which one that's coming through. It's coming through those. So that's going to be what here? Sweet. And as I rip the headphones off here, sorry about that. All right. But here we've got the chord itself soloed now. And what I've got is I sampled these chords out of the Virus Darkstar. The preset had a little bit of reverb and delay on it. And what we're hearing now is the original sample, just as it was from the Virus. It doesn't have that, you know, really, really large tail that we got a minute ago. The tail is coming from the Micro Pitch Delay pedal from Eventide. I just absolutely love what these pedals bring to the table, especially the Micro Pitch Delay and the Black Hole Reverb pedal. These pedals just add a texture to these. I mean, it's a pretty cool sound, you know, as it is. And there's definitely, you know, built-in reverb and delay inside of the MPC Live if we want to, you know, get to using that. But it just doesn't really have that same sonic character that we get when I turn the Micro Pitch Delay pedal. It just adds just this whole new life and sparkle to those chords. It really allows like the reverb to fill in that. That's why I'm soloing just the chords, because it really allows that reverb to fill in that extra space. Yeah, fantastic. I really love the fact that we've got multiple outputs on the MPC Live. I've actually got the main outs and then a 3 and a 4 and a 5 and a 6. So I'm running the bass through its own output here, so it's not going into the reverb, and the chords are just coming out of outputs 3 and 4 going through the micro pitch delay before they hit my mixer. One of the things about this type of setup that frustrates me when I'm trying to show this to you guys as well is that we can't actually see what anything is plugged into here. My mixer is this giant Soundcraft mixer underneath the table, and I really want to fix that somehow so that like you guys can see everything that's being plugged in, you know, as well, and that I can work the levels a little bit easier as well. So I've got like a really cheap mixer coming, and we're going to explore that like soon or whatever, and we'll see if we can maybe get like a cheap mixer to route everything into and just get a little bit tighter on like the visual representation of what's actually happening on the table. If you guys have any more questions at all, please feel free to drop those in the chat. Will I try the AKAI Force next time? We can absolutely do some more live streams with the AKAI Force. I love the Force. I think it's a fantastic machine. In fact, I think that the MPC Live and the AKAI Force are literally like the best boxes for producing and mixing outside of a computer. You've got all the tools you need in these to do like full complete, you know, tracks inside of just one box. All of the tools that we need are there. We can definitely include the Force in some future live streams for sure. Absolutely. One of the things that I want to do is just kind of continue to bring, you know, random pieces of gear out on these weekend jams and just, you know, make some music with you guys. You know, today we did this sort of dubby techno groove. I like, you know, sampling in real time on these live streams, but also that can get a little bit tedious sometimes. So like we don't always do like heavy sampling. Turn the volume on that down. Yeah, that's where that went. Okay. And I love that I can use the filter inside of the AKAI and just filter those chords way down. Now we'll listen just for those chords. And they're just tucked. I can tuck them, you know, as far back into the mix as I want to leave me room to bring up, you know, other instruments in the mix and whatnot. Yeah, more on the Force than your previous kit. Yeah, the Force is amazing. You can do so much with it. That's a great question as well, Jim. I don't actually use the Output Arcade, but I've got a friend who swears by it, gets a lot of use out of those sounds. I'm sure there's some great stuff in there. I'm doing more with hardware these days, and to be honest, I'm doing a lot more with like sound design and creating sounds and sample banks for some of these, you know, pieces of hardware like the model samples and the Digitact and the Poly-In tracker. Then I'm really doing more of that than creating like finished music inside of the box. But I have like the native instruments, you know, plugins and like the complete stuff like that for when I really want to get into, you know, those type of instruments. That Deluge looks really sweet as well. I've actually got a few of my sounds in like one of the updates of the factory banks for that when they got sample import included or something. I don't actually have a Deluge, and the workflow of it doesn't really like vibe with me per se, but that box looks really, really powerful if you can get into that kind of workflow. Absolutely. Yeah, MPC have good effects, and so many different kinds of, you know, filters and EQs and reverbs and I mean everything you need for producing and mixing. I can't stress that enough, including stuff like, you know, sub mixes, like buses that you can route multiple things through and process together. All kinds of great stuff like that really make some of these, like the AKAI stuff specifically, I mean, really usable. All right, I think we're gonna go ahead and get ready to wrap it up here. We've been going for about 2 hours and 10 minutes. Got some neat grooves made today. Again, so the neat thing about the SU700, one of, you know, it's got a lot of limitations that aren't so neat as well. But one of the neat things is that, you know, every track has its own individual filter. So like as I'm filtering this drum loop here, way back in the mix, I can turn it off. And then I can bring on a drum loop from bank 1. And it's got its own filter settings on it. I can filter that up. Or I can filter it back in the mix. Here it's way back there now, like behind the chord. And if I turn that one off and turn on the drum loop next to it, its filter cutoff is all the way open. It's not like I'm affecting a master filter. I'm affecting a filter per sample. So I can turn this you know, drum loop off and bring back the previous one, and it will still be filtered down. And it's way filtered down still, its own individual filter. Now I can filter it up. So having, you know, this was back in the 90s when this came out. So imagine, you know, not having any control over individual filters per track or any individual EQ per track in the groove boxes that I was working with at that time. This was a really powerful studio tool back in the 90s, even though it's very limited by today's standards. Takes ages to know, yeah. Hey, what's happening, Andy? Thank you very much. All right, thanks for tuning in. All right, everyone. I think, I know I said we were going to call it, but I think we are going to call it. Unless there's any last-minute questions in the chat, you know, I definitely want to be available for questions on these live streams. Yeah, it seems awkward. They say, Jim, that like the screen, the buttons on the Deluge are kind of like the screen of the Deluge, and like you can actually like get a representation even of what like kind of what your sample looks like using those lighted buttons. It just looks a little odd to me personally. I think another thing about it that kind of doesn't quite sit right with me is the fact that that screen is just so small. I know you're going to do a lot of intricate stuff with it, and to have a screen so small when you're probably going to be doing some menu diving is a little bit screwy for me as well. All right. Yeah, the Force, great routing, absolutely. All right. All right, fantastic. We are going to go ahead and call it today. Am I on the right camera? All right, fantastic. We'll be back next Sunday. I'm not exactly sure what we're going to be doing, but I appreciate everybody hanging out this week for some breaks and some dub techno, just casual music making, just kind of showing you guys how we can use, these different pieces of gear in different ways. I think it was really special that we were able to get even just some Eurorack percussion kind of into the mix today. I didn't focus really specifically on like really working with any one box or machine really intricately, and I really like that aspect of working with multiple pieces of gear in these sessions, is that we can kind of do a little bit with this box and a little bit with this box and a little bit over here and maybe add a little spice over here, and then we can kind of just walk our way back and forth between these devices. All right, so fantastic. Thanks again for tuning in, everyone, and until next week, thanks for watching. All right. Okay. Let's see here. Thanks again, everyone. We'll see you next week. Have a good one and take care of each other.